Are you afraid you're going to have to stone your kids?
یه سنگ دیگه بدین. خدایا به تو متوسل میشم. از گناه این دختر هرزه بگذر. ببخش.
If a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father, or the voice of his mother, and that, when they have chastened him, will not hearken unto them, then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, and bring him out unto the elders of his city, and unto the gate of his place. And they shall say unto the elders of his city, This our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And all the men of his city shall stone him with stones, that he die. So shalt thou put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear.
Verses like these are a struggle for us who live in the Western Greco-Roman world. I know oftentimes I've heard teachers who are well experienced in the game of teaching the Torah, they come across verses like these and they don't even know how to justify or ratify or rationalize these type of verses, but yet still claim to be Torah observant. Hi, I'm Hosea from the House of Ohio, and I want to clear up whether you have to stone your kids or not. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for coming out to the channel and supporting. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to us. I know these kind of subjects are confusing sometimes when you're first starting out, and I'm happy to help out and to bring some more clarity to the subject matter. I remember when I first came into the teaching, it was verses like these and subjects like these that I didn't understand or know how to reason. You know, when you're talking about capital punishment, stoning your children and eating certain things. And my mentor, I remember he used to say, hey, you're in the Torah, so you're going to have to stone your kids now. And not being a good year in, not even knowing rather that was true or not, versus backing down my position of saying I'm for the Torah. I was just like, well, then I guess I'll just be stoning my kids. And that was my position. That was my posture. And can you imagine how that must have sounded to him? I must have sounded crazy. Even when it came out of my mouth, it sounded horrible. But that was the only thing I knew. That was my position. I knew I was Torah observant. I knew that this was in the Torah, this was in the law. So I guess I was going to have to stone my kids.
What law is there say I got to like you?
None.
All right then. Don't you eat every day? Answer me when I talk to you. Don't you eat every day?
Yeah. I've heard teachers say, well, thank God that we don't have to worry about, stoning our kids anymore and doing those things since Yeshua came. But yet these are supposed to be Torah observant congregations. And I see that they kind of struggle with like, well, how can I be Torah observant, but yet I'm saying that he's done away with this? And in my mind, it's a contradiction, because if you do away with that aspect of the Torah, if you do away with those elements of the Torah, then you have to do away with all the elements of the Torah. If Yeshua came and did away with that, then he did away with all of it. And that's not the case. The Torah is not just law. That's the first misconception. The Torah is like a diamond. It has many facets. It has many angles. There is law in the Torah. And there are commands. And there are origin stories. There are covenants. There's contracts. There's edicts. There's wisdom. There's teaching and instructions. There are foreshadows. There's thematics. These are all different types of facets of this beautiful diamond that we call the Torah. The religious thinking of the carnal mind wants to put the Torah in a box, because the adversary knows that if he could get you to minimize the Torah to only one specific lane, your Torah will become rigid and legalistic. And I have news for you guys. Hasatan is a legalist. He is a master legalist. He wants to see you bound by the restriction of your thinking within the carnal mind. The sick thing about the adversary is he will make you be a religious, legalistic person when it comes to righteousness, where it's all or nothing. If you don't keep the Torah perfectly, then you can't keep none of it. Or if it's either this way or the highway. It's my way or the highway. If you're with me or against me. And that's the religious, legalistic attitude of Hasatan when it comes to righteousness. Whereas there's actually flexibility when it comes to the Torah. But when it comes to sin, you ever notice how Hasatan becomes very gray and be like, well, you know, technically I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for her doing this to me, or if they didn't do this to me back in the day, then maybe I wouldn't be doing this right now. There's always this gray area when it comes to sin and perversion, but when it comes to righteousness, he makes it so rigid and so tight that it almost seems hard to do.
That's right.
That is the lie of the carnal mind. The Torah has many facets. The word Torah is the word Yarah. The word Torah means to flow like water. So it's not a straight lane highway like we think of when we see Yeshua say straight is his way. No, it's actually a flexible straight that connects two bodies of water. I like to say one body of water being your spirit and the other body of water being his spirit. And there's a straight, a flexible, bendy, small, narrow straight that connects them two. So we established that the Torah has many different parts. If you're not subscribed, why don't you go ahead and do so, because over the winter, I'm gonna be taking the time to break down all these different aspects of the Torah. You know, the statutes, the commandments, the judgments, the wisdom, all these different elements of the Torah, so we can have a better understanding of it. And while you're subscribing, why don't you go ahead and hit that like button and let me know that I'm doing a good job and we can keep going. All right, thanks. When we see scriptures like these, when it's dealing with corporal punishment, they're known as the judgments of the Torah. The Hebrew word is mishpatim, or mishpat, singular, mishpatim, judgments, meaning a judgment in its simplest form is a verdict dictated by human intellect as well as by divine intellect. In the example of Deuteronomy 21:18-21, we see judgment handled as a penalty for a crime. The Torah is not just made up of commandments. A commandment is seen as an edict, whether human or divine, designed to put things or set things in order. When you look at the two definitions between judgment and commandments, they're immensely different. Is this punishment too harsh? First of all, I'm not saying that we're commanded to stone our kids in the sense that, well, if your kids act up, take them out back and stone them. That's not the case. But in certain extreme rebelliousness that may exhibit itself in children, this type of individual, according to the Most High, he said that this is the deliverance for the parents, so they're not stuck in a situation where they held captive or bound or in bondage to their own bad children or bad child. Mind you, we're going to look at this criterion because it's very extreme. Let's put some more context to the situation. In Hebrew culture, a child becomes a man at 13. From 0 to 6, we're learning to walk, talk, and be independent. So that leaves only from 6 to 13, which is roughly 7 years, to develop a drinking problem, a rebellion and unchastisable nature, a child who won't listen to his mother or his father. This child has a refusal to listen. This child is totally unreasonable, obstinate, determined, stuck in his ways. And let me ask you, if you saw a drunk 10-year-old, if you saw a drunk 11-year-old, would you be thinking, oh, that's so cute? No, you wouldn't. We're talking about a drunkard at 10, a drunkard at 11, a drunkard at 12. Seeing a child with those characteristics at 12, 11, 9, you would think to yourself, oh, this is a bad seed. I like when people say, well, that was biblical times and that doesn't apply now. I mean, if we look at the 21st century today, we still have the same thing going on. In the 21st century, our children are stubborn, obstinate, stiff-necked. They don't listen to their parents. Their father isn't in the home, so there isn't any discipline to offer them, and then the discipline that is offered, they won't even listen to that, whether it's a principal or a local leader. They have no respect for their elders. They get high, and then at the end of the day, they still end up in a realm of death. They still end up getting killed young on the streets. The Torah still fulfills itself. And this is in the 21st century. Even though we're looking at the ancient foundations of our faith, there's still applicable principles, and Father's covenant is still going to have its effect whether we want to accept it or not.
Then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, and bring him out unto the elders of his city, and unto the gate of his place. And they shall say unto the elders of his city, This our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard.
Now, this ain't you and your homies getting together with some of the elders of the community of the church and you know, 4 or 5 coming together and say, yeah, this is a bad kid, let's stone him. No, when it said to bring him out amongst the elders in the city, they're talking about bringing them out before. I mean, it's hard for us to grab this concept, but the Sanhedrin of the time in ancient Israel, they had to be made up of at least 23 elders. Okay, so 23 elders, that's a lot of elders to sit there and be like, yeah, that kid's bad. But a true Sanhedrin will be 70 elders. And for 70 elders to look at your child and see with credible witness, with credible evidence that this child deserves to be stoned, I would say that's a pretty bad child. On top of all these provisions, let's consider Numbers chapter 15. Numbers chapter 15 verse 30 talks about if someone transgresses the Torah presumptuously, they know it's wrong, but they do it anyways. He said, then their iniquity shall be upon them. They get what they deserve. They should get what they should get. This is then repeated in Hebrews chapter 10 verse 26. It also says that, hey, whenever you sit there and take lightly the commandments of the Father, when you crucify Yeshua afresh, when you take the grace so lightly and you transgress the law and you wave your fist with a high hand and says, look, I don't care what it says, I'm gonna do what I want to do. He says, your iniquity shall be upon you, your punishment shall be upon you, you shall get what you get. And he's talking to adults, he's talking to the strangers, he's talking to the foreigners. He said there's one law for everybody. So wouldn't it be fair and just and equitable for the Most High to have the same attitude towards this young child, man-child, this young child who is also having the same attitude towards righteousness? He's completely rebellious. Shouldn't he get the same penalty? The penalty should be you get what you deserve because you know it's wrong, but you do it anyways. This is what a rebellious nature is about. So to me, that's just Father showing his faithfulness and justice by allowing all who approaches his Torah observant lifestyle with so much disdain and rebellion that he gets a swift penalty of retribution. So in conclusion, you're not going to have to stone your kids for just being bad if you decide to cross over into the Torah. But in the rare case that your child is some demon seed, well, then
Your son of the devil.